Now, the opioid crisis killing so many people across the country. Word is it's running out of room at the morgues.
The battle against opioids, the crisis hitting the headlines again.
53,000 Americans died from opioid overdose deaths in 2016.
One thing that I have found is that if we don't talk about it, then things don't change.
It's Michael Gottlieb. I'm a volunteer firefighter, EMT for Montgomery County. I've been doing this for about 5 years now.
My name's Sarah Tencio. I'm an LCPC, which is a licensed professional counselor. I'm also a board certified supervisor, so I supervise everybody in this particular office.
So pretty much what Narcan is, it's an opioid blocker in the sense that, so when you ingest an opioid and you take too much, the opioid locks into your receptors, and the receptors in the brain. Lock up too many receptors, you stop breathing. Now what happens is that once we administer Narcan, it takes off the opioid and frees up your receptors, so essentially brings you back to life because you can breathe once again. Narcan is administered, it can be administered intravenously, it also can be administered through the nose, so we administer 2 milligrams, 1 per each nostril, There's sort of like this orange box that comes with the medication. You take the medication out, you screw it in, and then they have this thing called an atomizer, which when you hit the spray, it sort of atomizes all over. So you plug it in, you put it into their nostril, and then you try to step back a little bit because as soon as you shoot it in them, it's almost instantaneous. They get up and they're already ready to fight because you take away their high. We wait a couple seconds, and then they typically should come back to life.
In this particular area, in the Gaithersburg area and up towards our Towson office, those two areas tend to be the heaviest opioid users because we have a lot of young people. Maybe it's because of the colleges in this area. And some of the other offices, it tends to run an older population. Here in Towson, we get the college kids that are getting into the opiates. We've had many overdoses. Narcan has definitely changed the game, but it is disturbing because of it's so unpredictable. Like once we think we learn something about a substance, the fentanyl, carfentanil, something changes, and they'll make something that's resistant to treatment, resistant to Narcan. Like with, right now with carfentanil and fentanyl, it's very resistant to Narcan. We had somebody recently who overdosed and had to be Narcan, I think 2 or 3 times. So he was very lucky. But that's terrifying because to us, when Narcan was created, that's a godsend. It changed everything. And now, it's not a 100% guarantee that it's gonna, revive people. So yes, it's pretty terrifying.
I personally believe Narcan is and a couple of my friends do believe that Narcan is a contributing factor to the reason why so many overdoses has gone up. And now let me explain to you why. I think Narcan is an incredible drug. Okay, now let me explain to you this. Narcan, you can't overdose on Narcan. You can give it as many times. The body builds up very little resilience to it because all it does is you put it in, it just removes the blockers from the opioid. Now, the reason why I say this is because if you're making it more relatively available, the user doesn't really have that fear anymore, the fear aspect in the sense that they no longer fear of dying. Because back in the day, before it was over-the-counter at Walgreens, over-the-counter on CVS, there was always that risk that they could die, so there was always a little amount that they would take. And I remember back when I started, I ran my first overdose 1 time in an entire year. This year alone, I've run close to, I'd say almost 500, and that was before all this happened. I mean, it's an incredible amount of times people overdose.
Really, it's only having a positive effect. It's not like people keep Narcan on hand, like I'm gonna go ahead and overdose, but it's okay because I have Narcan. That is not the case at all. Most of the time we're encouraging like parents and spouses to keep it on hand, knowing that you have a loved one that is using opioids because you could potentially save their lives. So we just try to educate, using our family group and whatnot to make sure that they know it's available. It's available over the counter now, so you don't need a prescription for it, which is huge. That's made a huge difference. But we just want people to have it. We want it to be something that is regularly available so that there's no chance, when somebody overdoses that they have no chance of being revived. I mean, I can understand that perspective. I understand where they're coming from, but that's not what we've seen. That's actually not what we've seen at all. People tend to not have fear of overdose because they're so deep in their addiction. I don't think it has anything to do with Narcan. That hasn't changed. You know, they're to the point where, you know, they just need to get that next fix so that they don't get sick. Narcan's not probably even in their mind at all.
The problem is the group homes are getting filled up. I mean, state insurance, some of these people that don't have insurance have to go through the state, and the state just doesn't have the resources or the capabilities to help these people out. It's just a lot of money, it's a lot of time for them, and pretty much giving them Narcan is a way of saying, well, he's alive, he needs help, but he has Narcan that he can lean on. So it's pretty much, it is a Band-Aid to a very big problem that we're having right now, especially in Baltimore. I'd say that's pretty much the biggest issue right now, especially since fentanyl has come out. It's a Band-Aid because, like I said, you know, he goes to the hospital, he gets fixed, gets better, comes back, has withdrawals, and instead of putting himself in rehab, he has to go about and he does it again. But he knows that he has Narcan, so he's not going to die. So it's a big Band-Aid to a very big problem.
I think the most common misconception involves the stigma. People think it's a character flaw, it's a moral failure. We want them to understand this is a disease of the brain. You know, your brain is not functioning properly. You don't have the capability right now to make sound, intelligent, rational decisions.